Welcome to a new edition of the Neon Jazz interview series with Nashville studio guitar legend Tom Hemby. He talked about his new 2022 CD with his band called Dealin It. He has lived and worked in Nashville as an active musician since 1978, but he was born and he is from Southeast Missouri. His breakthrough came as an acting touring musician backing artists like the Imperials and Amy Grant and Michael McDonald and so many others. His touring career soon evolved into a recording career as a studio guitarist, producer, and songwriter, and he talks all about this. Enjoy.
Tom, thanks for taking a minute out for Neon Jazz. I appreciate it.
Sure, absolutely.
You have a new album that is out now, Dealin It, and I'm curious, we've been living through this whole pandemic, and largely we've been away from live music for so long. What does this release mean for you?
Did you say release?
Yeah, this album, having it come out now.
Okay. I didn't know if you said release or relief.
Oh, yeah. Probably the same thing, huh?
Exactly. Of course, we musicians love to get out and play and do what we do. And so many times that is in a public arena, and just having to put aside all these COVID issues now and moving forward with this release of the album is, it's just, I don't know, it's kind of, in a way, it's kind of a load lifted off my shoulders just to be able to get out and do what I do again and perform and stuff. This release, is a culmination of things we had done over a period of time through a workshop in Fort Wayne, Indiana. We would go in and we would do a demonstration of a recording for an audience in a studio. It was like a 3-day event where people would pay to come see how you record a song, the whole recording process. So we did this over a period of time, and then over this period of time, we ultimately had enough songs to put together to create a whole project, so an album project. So this, on many levels, is a relief as well. The whole thing about this release right now to me is just, it kind of represents music coming back and people doing what they enjoy doing and that whole thing. So,
well, we're coming out of Kansas City. You have roots in Missouri. Talk to me a little bit about your Missouri roots and how things kind of started for you in music.
I grew up in a small community outside of Poplar Bluff, Missouri, a little town called Puxico, just on the edge of the Ozarks there in southeast Missouri. I grew up in a musical family. My father was a guitar player and played and sang. My mother she played accordion and sang that whole thing, and had a lot of roots of, country music and gospel music growing up in a church and that whole thing. Also became sidetracked with a lot of other kinds of music growing up, with aside from country and gospel. I mean, when I heard the rock thing, the Beatles, then there was R&B music. When I started hearing late 60s R&B music that was played, Smokey Robinson and that whole Motown era, and I was influenced by so much other eclectic forms of music. So yeah, and it just has all culminated to what I am today. I mean, I'm just kind of I'm definitely a fusion of all this stuff. So.
What brought you to Nashville, and how did things take up? And when you look at your itinerary of musicians you've been around, it's staggering. So how did all of this kind of begin for you?
As I mentioned before, having influence of gospel music, at the time, of course, like I said, I was born and raised in southern Missouri, and just through a series of circumstances, I ended up in central Illinois. I kind of followed some other musician friends of mine to that part of the country, and where I met my wife. And then one night we went to a concert of this group, the Imperials, this contemporary Christian group from many years ago. And long story short, that night I found out they were looking for a guitar player. After the show, I went up and approached the leader of the group, Armin Morales, and I said, I hear you're looking for a guitar player, and so they actually had me come up and audition. Long story short, hey, they hired me on the spot, and I moved to Nashville. So I was one of the few musicians that actually came to Nashville that actually had a gig waiting on them when I got here. So, you know, at that time they were kind of a huge thing in the contemporary Christian music market. So that just kind of threw me into a lot of other opportunities of working with other artists, especially in the recording situations and stuff. And over a period of time, I started to be that guy getting the calls to play on records for other artists. From there, that just kind of snowballed into a lot of other genres of music, you know, especially here in Nashville, the country thing and the pop world. And I did a whole lot of the contemporary Christian music stuff with artists like Michael W. Smith and Amy Grant, people like that. But I also had this thing inside of me about jazz. I always loved jazz, was heavily influenced by great players of, you know, fusion players, blues players, and just straight up jazz players, you know, just, so I've always had that thing in me that I wanted to do. And so through the years, I just, whenever I have had an opportunity to do so, I would certainly go for it. And this whole situation of going to Sweetwater in Fort Wayne, Indiana to do these workshops allowed me to do that very thing again. So, so here we are. We have a project now.
So what was the first live show that you saw, like a large-scale show that really blew you away, that made you think, I'd like to do that someday?
Of course, growing up in a small town in the southeast corner of Missouri where there was not a lot of great live music, the first rock concert I ever got to go to was to see Rare Earth back in the day. You know, this is like in early 70s. And so, man, I went to that show, and it's like, I was just blown away. I'm like, I want to do this. You know, so, I mean, I wanted to do that before I even saw them, but that just, you know, just really egged it on there. So.
What was the first musician that you played with that really made you think, wow, I can't believe I'm here. I can't believe this is happening. Like you felt like you arrived.
I don't know if it would be the first, but I'll have to say meeting my hero, the reason I wanted to learn to play guitar to begin with was guitarist Chet Atkins. When I first heard Chet play as a kid, I thought I was listening to two different guitar players because, you know, I was hearing this rhythm thing going on the guitar, and I was hearing melody all at the same time. I'm going, man, that has to be two different guitar players. When I found out it was one guy doing all that stuff, I became obsessed with wanting to know how to do that. You know, I was like, you know, 10 years old, mind you. And so I started buying these Chet Atkins records, or my parents would buy them for me, and I would sit there for hours dropping a needle on a record trying to figure out this finger-style guitar stuff, you know. And so fast forward years later, I actually had an opportunity to meet Chet here in Nashville, especially doing what I'm doing, working with different artists and stuff. There came an opportunity, and when I worked with Amy Grant for many years off and on, and one day she got a call from her mother to perform at a country club thing for her women's club. There's about 500 women for an afternoon, and so her mother would ask her if she and Chet Atkins would do this thing together. And so, long story short, again, I ended up being the guitar player for Amy that day with her and her then husband Gary Chapman. So we met the day before we did the concert, and it's the first time I had actually got to meet Chet. And I'd lived here for several years and always wanted to meet him and never had the opportunity. So the day before that, I was kind of like, you know, groveling and you know, man, you're the reason I learned to play guitar. I probably just drooled on his collar or something, you know. And so the next day when we did the concert, we just kind of set up in a little semicircle on stage, and everybody was going to do something. Chet also had his protege there, Paul Yandel, and another great guitar player and harmonica player friend of mine, Pat Bergeson, was there, and myself and Gary and Amy. And so as it turns out, I was sitting next to Chet on the stage. As we were going around, everybody was going to do something, so they asked me to play a solo guitar piece. And so Chet, sitting next to me, he was going to introduce me, and when he did, he said, well, I just met this young fella yesterday, and he said he learned to play the guitar by listening to my records. I guess we're getting ready to find out. I'm like, okay, no pressure here. I couldn't look at my hands for couldn't look at my hands for a few seconds, you know. It's like in my mind's eye, they felt like they were jumping up and down, you know, until I finally felt a string. I thought, okay, maybe I can pull this off. But anyway, it went very well, and he was so gracious to me afterwards and stuff. And I remember afterwards he actually asked me to if I would be interested in doing a guitar show with Muriel Anderson, who was she was noted for doing these series of concerts here in Nashville every year during NAMM show. It was like her guitar night. She would ask different guitar players to show up and perform. So I actually did the very first one with her, so because of Chet. So, but anyway, yeah, Chet definitely was a hero, and that was probably one of the greatest things for me to do, to get to sit next to my guitar hero and have him introduce me the way he did.
That's awesome.
Which was funny.
That's a great story. Every day you wake up, you have the opportunity to play and create music. What's been the greatest joy about being a professional musician for you?
Well, I mean, just getting to do what I enjoy doing. You know, I remember when I was a kid, there was a farmer in my community, and I was talking to him on the street one day, and he said, "You know, son, 90% of life is doing what you enjoy doing," and that just always stuck deep inside me. You know, I thought, hey, I'm going to pursue this. I don't know how in the world I'll ever get there, but I want to do this, you know. And so just to be able to, every day, to wake up and be able to do the thing you enjoy doing most of life, it's priceless to me, you know, to be able to have that opportunity, and so grateful to have that opportunity. So
let's say you have a dream tonight. You run into the younger version of yourself before you came to Nashville, and based on all these years of experience that you've gained, you can tell your younger version one thing. What would you tell that younger version?
Oh gosh, the one thing I could think of many things. The one thing, especially myself, I would tell myself, dig deeper and become a better music reader. because I've certainly been thrown in that chair many times that I'm like, boy, I wish I'd had my reading chops together better than what I do, you know. So yeah, you can't learn too much. I'll put it that way. So you know, I've just taken advantage of every opportunity through the years to learn from every musician I can, and not necessarily guitar players, but there's been great, keyboard players and saxophone players that I listen to their lines and stuff. I'm always just absorbing, music from all directions.
So, as we kind of return and the world wakes up and live music starts again, we're hopefully on the tail end of this pandemic. When we do come back more in earnest, we've been away from this for about 2 years now. What do you hope we all collectively realize about the power of live music?
I'm certain that there's going to be a way deeper appreciation for it. It's kind of one of those things, you don't know what you got till it's gone. So, I just think, by and large, that's probably the one take we can take away from all this, is that, hey, we certainly can appreciate what we had, and boy, when it was yanked away from us, it's like when you're sitting around twiddling your thumbs and just itching and sometimes just dying to hear some live music somewhere or see something going on in a live situation that, it's just, I think that if nothing else, it's a deeper appreciation for live music.
So everyone has a perception of who they think you are, your family, your friends, your fans, but ultimately you live your life. You have a perception of you. Who do you think you are?
Wow. Man, great questions.
Thank you.
Who do I think I am? Well, I tell you who I hope I think I am. More than being, I hope that, people view me as a great musician and appreciate what I do, but even more than that, I hope people perceive me as a great human being, someone that's always been fair to someone else, treated people the way they wanted to be treated, with kindness and graciousness, and someone that I hope that, when someone shows up to my wake someday, that they'll have nothing to say but good things about me. Maybe a lot of laughter along the way. So,
I like that, man. Tom, thank you for being flexible with your schedule and taking a minute out. Good luck with the album and as we move forward, man.
Thank you so much. So great to talk with you.
Thanks for listening and tuning in to another Neon Jazz interview, where we give you a bit of insight into the finest minds and players in Nashville, Kansas City, and spots all over the world, giving fans all that jazz. And thanks to Tom for his class, cool, and music. If you want to hear more interviews, go to Famous Interviews with Joe Domino in the iTunes Store. Visit neonjazz at youtube.com, and for everything Neon Jazz all the time, go to the neonjazz.blogspot.com. Until next time, enjoy the jazz, my friends.
Neon Jazz.